Today we're going to be talking about what storage is, how it's changing what people are going to be using the blockchain for, and what's happening right now and how people can get involved with the storage project. So first off, we're going to introduce one of the founders, Shawn Wilkinson, who's based in Atlanta. Shawn, will you please give us an intro and tell us all about how you are involved with storage and what the project is about?
Sure. So again, my name is Shawn Wilkinson, founder and lead developer of Storj. I'll give a quick overview of Storj. So we provide as a collaborative cloud. That's essentially a cloud built by us, the users, rather than a traditional centralized company. Examples: Amazon, Dropbox, Microsoft, all these companies that offer these cloud solutions related to computation, data storage, and whatnot. So it's really about building a cloud power users, and in that portion, it's built to be secure and peer-to-peer. So you have complete access and controls of the files that you put on your network, and everything is encrypted before you leaves your computer. Again, about bringing control to the users, giving users complete control over their data, rather than these traditional apps like Dropbox or whatnot, where everything's just kind of put in the open for people to spy and snoop upon it. We don't really like that idea. We want to give the power back to us, the user. The other portion is the selling your hard drive space. So the cloud, the collaborative cloud, is built by the users and also maintained by the users. So if you have some extra hard drive space, and someone on the other end of that can store their files on your hard drive. And so you're just getting little encrypted bits and chunks of those files, and you're getting paid in cryptocurrency to be able to do that. So that's kind of the general overview of the storage platform and what we're doing. So we have some questions that we can take both from here and both from the IRC chat. So we're has our storage on Freenode. So I wanted to make sure everything was working out all right and everyone can see this. So if you can see this and everything's working all right, people on IRC, just let me know.
So I think that how you want to bring the community in and just how you're wanting to even have them participate in this conversation really shows like your interest in making this a joint effort. Can you address, I guess, what role do you see the community playing in your development process, and what in the end is the vision that the community is supposed to be sharing with you?
Sure. The community is very, very important part of storage. So we really, I think, take pride to listening to what the community has to say and tailoring what we're building and we're developing based on that. So even in the early days of storage, we were more focused on building out just a decentralized and encrypted secure storage network. And then as an addition, we said, oh, let's build out a portion where people can sell their hard drive space to the network. That was just an aside. But really, we got a lot of feedback from the users that that's what they really, really, really wanted. They wanted to be a part of that network, and they wanted to, they had all this extra storage space they weren't doing anything with. So why not sell it to a network? So in terms of that, we kind of even shifted priorities a little bit very back end. And we like to do that. We like to see what the users want, and adjust our models, adjust what we're building, adjust our interfaces to fit that. Because that's who we're building this stuff for. We're building for ourselves. We use it internally, the prototype tools that we build out, but it's really for the users. So we have to make sure that we list them all in the development, in really all discussion. So we've done that multiple times in the past for all the really big important decisions in terms of use discussions on the forum or we went with the community's choice, not my choice or a team member's choice. We said, here, community, here's a bunch of options that we've laid out for you. Pick one. And that's what we've gone
Can
with
you
so
give an
far. It's
example?
worked out just fine.
Can you give an example of how the community played a role in making a decision that you weren't too maybe keen about at the time?
Sure. So I'll answer that question, and then I see a bunch of questions piling up here on IRC. So I
Okay.
want to get to those after this one, and then we'll move from there. So one of the things with what protocol were we going to launch our cryptocurrency? So we have a cryptocurrency called Storj Coin X, which is the cryptocurrency use network. So we want to make it as easy as possible. So we're kind of figuring out, okay, what protocol should we put this cryptocurrency on? So we're deciding between Mastercoin and Counterparty and Next and whatnot. And there is all these decisions to make, a big decision, like what protocol are we going to launch this on? So in terms of that, we put out a poll to that's what we went with. We've been happy with that so far. Training with multiple protocols, but that was an important and big that out to the community side.
Okay.
Here, are you on IRC as well? Do you have that open, or is it just me?
I will have to open my ADM.
All right,
And I will sign in. Go for it.
Here. Some questions to the top. So let me answer some of these questions at the top that you guys have posed.
Okay.
And then move my way down. So yes, what I'm wearing right now is Google Glass. A fun tech toy for me, so I can watch Bitcoin just 24/7. It's about the white paper. So one thing, if you're getting into the storage project and you're trying to learn more about it, read our first white paper that's out now. So that's, I'll type in the URL into Slack, http://metadisk.org/metadisk.pdf. So that's something that we're releasing towards the end of the week, but you can take a look at it and get some of the overview of how the network works. And then we're going to be releasing the second paper on the more underlying storage network that will really dive into the technical details. Let's see. Okay, well, that's lots of questions.
That's great.
All right, I guess one of the main things that people are asking about is Harry Boo asked how the storage network can resist an attack where a large botnet just turns off all the data space. So basically you have someone with a large botnet, and they have against a network, and they turn. So essentially, from our research, we found two things. One, that there is a huge amount around. So you have a computer, you have your hard drive. Let's say it's a terabyte of hard drive space, and you're probably not using most of that. So we have this huge amount of space that's lying around not being used, and we call it user space. And essentially, that user space is larger. We're talking about like every single internet-connected computer. Obviously, some storage space left over. This is a huge amount of space that it completely dwarfs the amount of space produced by Amazon or Google or all these other large companies. To someone having a very large botnet and shutting it off or trying to destroy the data, as long as it achieves some sort of sufficient growth, that's really just going to be a drop in the bucket compared to the network. So we're going to say, oh, it went down by a couple of percent. It could be a ton of computers. Talking about, we just have this massive amount of space that if you really try to attack it under a network that has grown slightly, it's not going to affect it that much. You're not going to be able to affect the network even with a large amount of computers. So let's go through some of the other questions. You have IRC up there. Are you able to look at that?
Yep. I have plenty of ideas what data I want to store, smiley face. Yep.
Yes, there's plenty of stuff. I mean, who doesn't use data in this day and age? Who doesn't use Dropbox or Google Drive? So having a tool that's just that, but sleeker, faster, and more secure, definitely something that everyone can use. So some people are saying it's a bit laggy. Let's see.
Yeah, your camera's a bit laggy sometimes.
Let's close down some of my internet connections there and see if it's gotten any better. So is that better, guys? You tell me if that's better or worse. So yeah, so something that StorjX is saying that yes, it could be used in video production workflows, and so those are two main initial use cases of Storj. We're saying, okay, who uses the absolute most amount of data? So we found that it's video production and bio data. So we're talking about genome sequencing and all that kind of fun stuff, and video data. These people produce huge, large amounts of files. And talking to some of these people, they're really having trouble with their current tool. Those are the people we're really reaching out to work with first. So for that, we'll be able to provide a pretty cool use case for storage, but also make sure that the early people in the network are just getting their storage space bought up simply because the demand for it in the network is so high. So okay, a lot better, cool. I think I had the stream opened up on another computer here, so cutting that out increased my bandwidth, so everything should be a lot better.
There's a question up here that we didn't see. What kind of bandwidth controls are in DriveShare?
So right now, the DriveShare portion, there's not really hard bandwidth controls. That's something that we will build into the system because we understand that people have limits and our favorite ISPs. So that's something that's not currently in there, but we'd like to that in to realize that's very important to users. So one of the first things we're building out is simply the space limits on your drive, but we'll be also building in bandwidth limits there as well. It's worth noting that we're doing this very modularly and very incrementally, so we're building everything a feature set at a time. We're not going to dump this huge thing on everybody. It's going to be like, okay, we've released a feature, let's clean it up, and then, okay, what do you guys want to work on next? So we want to make this very route, developing for months and months and months or months, and then people are waiting. No, we're just going to develop it feature by feature. So that's something that we want to include in early on.
Okay. On that topic, are you going to be putting everything open source on GitHub, and can people do requests?
Now that we have is open source on GitHub. It's under the MIT license. I wouldn't expect you. I trust this at all. Code with running this on your machine. You should be able to verify the authenticity of the source code and what it's doing. So I think that's a very important point to follow. So everything is available github.com/storj, STORJ. Oh yeah, so PW Design, yeah. So reach out to us at hello@storj.io or storj.io. And we're actually working on that. It's actually pretty much finished. Might have a few tweaks on it that we can actually start storing large video files and data files right now. So that was primarily built for Cancer Research Institute in Texas that wanted to kind of try out our system in the early days. So we're building out a tool to shuttle around large bits of data in our testing. So if you're involved in video production, that's I'll read the question. Here, scale issues on storing video clips from a lot of cars. I would like to reach out to you sometime to get more depth if possible. So yeah, that's something we could definitely help you with some of our early tools. So happy to do that. Let's see.
And
what's the next question?
There's a person here saying, my company here in Vegas is having a scale issue on storing video clip files on all of our cars. Yeah.
Let's see, what's below it? All right, so Mark underscore is performance determined by the number of times a particular data is shared or based on the number of peers in the network? So performance is based on the number of peers that have that file and the connection speed of a particular peer. So obviously, if a peer is a very, very fast server, then obviously that you're going to be able to get that file very fast, but you also might have 5 or 10 other small home connections, and it depends on their internet bandwidth and how close they are to you. So it really kind of varies on kind of the amount of peers that you have in the network and their connection speed. But that's why we developed Metadisk out first. So Metadisk is a file sharing and file distribution web app that we built out at the front end of storage. And it runs a lot of the storage software and allows people to kind of interface with the storage network without having to download any complicated files. So essentially what you can do is you can take your file on the storage network that you want to download, and you can request it from these Metadisk nodes. And they're already connected to the storage network. They know what's going on. And so they can essentially automatically become peers to the file. All you have to do is request it, and they'll become automatic peers from the files. You go from very peers for your file to a very large number of peers fairly quickly, as long as you request that file.
All right, we have another one. Okay. Interested in what you were thinking of with genomic data storage.
So in terms of that, one of the people we've talked to, I won't mention any names for now, but essentially they are storing huge batches of genomic data. So I did some research in my undergrad, with a department of biology in the University of Washington. And even on our small research that we're doing, we're still generating these huge amounts of data sets, hundreds of gigabytes in size. Just you have these that really help with research, but they generate huge amounts of data. So we're talking about biodata, genomics data, all these portions generate huge amounts of data. And the question is, how do you store that? How do you manage that? So you'll have like 150 that you'll have to transfer around to another researcher or another place. And you normally do these through these traditional services like Amazon S3 or Cloud. And that takes a bit of a setup, and it's not necessarily the most cost-effective thing. In terms of pushing some data around, and it costs about $1,500 on Amazon's web services, and pushing around on the storage network was about 150. So about an order of magnitude in terms of cost difference. So I think one of the things is cost. In terms of our network is a lot more flexible. It doesn't really need all this very expensive dedicated hardware. It's just transferring files around. So it's way more cost effective, and then you all add in the security portions that are very important when you're dealing with genomic data and maybe data that needs to be HIPAA compliant. So we're looking in terms of that as really an initial use case, simply because they use large amounts of data and their current solutions are too expensive and not really working with large data. So that also gives us a really good use case.
Would it be possible to store copies?
Say that again?
Just a thought. So I just had a second thought on what you mentioned. If we are capable of storing large amounts of data on Metadisk, is that right? And powered by the storage network, would it also be possible to run like queries against that data?
Working on that. That's kind of the next step to storage. So right now we're simply focusing on the data storage problem. That's a big enough problem already. So once we figure that out and once we have that more robust, then we'll start to look to run queries and process that distributed manner. But that gets into like how you can do that this in a distributed manner is stuff that we're kind of figuring out on the computer science portion. I mean, then you get into zero knowledge proofs and all kind of very, very complicated and not so. Try to figure out how we can do decentralized storage and do it in a trustless and secure manner. But the queries and computation, that's something that will have to come later. So let's see.
Okay.
Some other questions. So I think that answers Lee's question about genomic data.
Yeah. Well, there's a follow-up to that, wondering if I meant querying the data on the storage network. Is it asking if we can make the data more available and have it distributed fairly quickly?
So once you have a particular storage network, you can essentially, so you have redundant copies of that data to ensure against failure. So we recommend, right now we recommend about 3 copies of that file across the network. In case one goes down, then you can just recover it from the other sources. So in terms of that, if you want to make that data set more available, you just increase the redundancy. So you might have 3 people that you can connect to by default to retrieve the data from, but if this is something you want highly available and you want everyone to download and use, it's up to 5. And so therefore there's a lot more people to connect to and download and distribute and use that file. Okay, here's a question. So Caribou was asking, from the lessons of Bitcoins, do you have a plan on marketing or communication plan strategy to avoid the negative images that may stick for years? Probably mean you're going to emphasize bad at least uses of this platform. So one of the unique things about storage is that we're building everything an application at a time. So we're building out Metadisk first, which is kind of the file storage and sharing application, allows you to get files on the network. And then we're building out DriveShare next, which is the portion that you use to sell your hard drive space to the network. And essentially, we're just building out as application. Applications are inherently customizable. So you could take Metadisk and essentially change the colors and change it from English to Russian and change the interface around to fit a different demographic, or you could change the interface around for a particular use case. So instead of storing files, it's specifically used for storing images. So you're going to have, 100, thousands of applications that are running on the storage platform or using the Metadisk code, but they won't be called directly Metadisk or storage. You'll just have a little notation at the bottom that this is powered by Metadisk or powered by Storj. So that both helps branding issues in terms of everything's customizable, everything can be white labeled. So this will just be the underlying platform. So it allows us to tailor to different use cases. Also helps where people are obviously going to say, you know, bad things about the platform, no matter how good or bad it is. So in terms of that, it's some particular person running the particular application might catch some flack. But in terms of that, I don't think the reputation for the underlying network is going to be damaged, because at the end we want this. It's a tool. It's really it's up to them. Obviously, there's going to be bad apples, but you know, are we going to let them stay in the way of, you know, innovation? And the answer is no. We're going to go on and build better tools for people, and that's just what we're going to do. So let's see. So you said data more available and have it distributed very quickly. So both. So if you increase the number of redundancy, so you also increase the amount of availability, and then because there's more peers on the network, you can now download for more people simultaneously. So everything scales at once. So that answers usually. Let's see what's next.
Few more here. Regarding the prognostication, I'm not clear regarding the permanence of data stored. Is it mutable? Is it deletable? Maybe I haven't read the right documentation with that information. Right. So is the data stored on storage?
So at current count, like I said before, we're building this very link feature sets, essentially one at a time. So in the current portion, the data is not mutable, but that's something that we already have some ideas on how to scale that out in kind of the next version of the system. So the idea is that you have a file, you take that metadata, you encrypt it, you split it into chunks, and through the network, and you take that metadata and you store it on the blockchain, so all the other applications can access that file should they have the relevant information and keys. And so in terms of essentially updating that file, you simply have to re-upload and update that information. But we're building out ways to make that easier to do. So that's the mutable portion. Deletable, very easy. You have complete control over that. Since you're paying per periodic checks to make sure the file is there and has been modified and it's available. So you're doing periodic checks and you're also paying on those periodic checks. So you have complete control over that. So if you want to delete a file, you just tell them to delete the file and they'll happen essentially in the next check-in. So you have complete control over that. So Lee is asking about being stored when they store the file on the encrypted system. So that's something we'd like to kind of trend towards when the system is a little bit more stable, a little more secure, and it's been there for a while. So we would like to kind of pursue full HIPAA compliance, but that's going to take a while. That's from a very lengthy process for that. So that's something that we would like to get to in the future. So we just kind of wanted to put that out there. But in terms of the security of the system, everything is supposed to be encrypted client-side on your machine before it ever touches the network. So the burden is on you as long as your system is not compromised and gave away your keys for your data. then it doesn't matter what happens. The network is only receiving encrypted chunks. They're only receiving encrypted data, so it has no idea what's in there. Has no access to the keys. It's simply a transmission method. So we really want to give the users control of that. Make sure they have complete control over the keys for their data.
Okay.
Let's see.
And so we have a question here from Lemmy. I'm not sure if storage would have to be for storing genetic research, as that data is in a lot of situations not linked to a specific person.
So in terms of that, I'm not essentially sure about your question. So the idea we're just using a researcher or a person creates essentially has the application storage app running on the of course Storj Coin, so they'd be able to store the file on the network, and they're essentially just using storage as a tool for essentially storing the data. So maybe you could clarify your question a little bit, help me understand. There is one thing. API for storing and retrieving files on the network is available right now. The link to it is in the RC chat as of now. And we actually have some bounties out for 10,000 Storj Coin per sample application produced. So we have a decentralized video demo, a decentralized images demo, actually two of those as well. And then
Pretty
I think
cool.
like a open source Creative Commons library. We developed fairly quickly of the existing API. So the API is there and ready to use, and we already have some existing applications that people have demoed and prototyped out. So we'd like to expand upon those. But now we have some cool things that you can look at our forums, storjtalk.org, and you can look at those through those demos.
Cool. So there's also a question from Mark. Is there a schedule for rolling out an API?
The API is already out there. So you can look at the API now and you can play around with it now. And we already have applications running. So that's out. We still have plenty of things that we want to add to it and make that robust, but it's useful now.
So that's an API to Metadisk.
Yeah, that's an API to Metadisk, which runs on top of kind of our prototype code for the storage network.
Will there eventually be an API directly into the network?
Yeah, so Metadisk will take care of that. So essentially, we'll have people be able to run the full node software on their computers, but we also want to make it very easy for applications to interface and build on the storage network, games and any other files that would like to use as a data source. And so in terms of that, we built out Metadisk to kind of be a gateway for that. So you don't have to download any special software or anything. You just connect to a Metadisk node, and then there's an API for you to stream data back. Question there? Yes. That's something that needs to be clarified. There is no mining on the storage network. There might be coins, but as a separate thing, but there is no what you're used to mining on the storage network. We're still buying, and selling space through this network. The coins are not mined.
Just getting through the rest of these questions here. By Pierre Rebel, what in your opinion, Super 3 is a worrisome attack vector on the network?
that if you look, I guess we're all familiar with Bitcoin. If you look at the Bitcoin white paper and what it was trying to address, the main thing that it was trying to address is double spends. That was the problem that was keeping uh, decentralized and distributed networks from happening. Dealing with money, uh, which Bitcoin was really trying to solve at that point. So it was mainly concerned with the attack vector of double spend. For the storage network and for any decentralized network, the main problem to making the network work, or the main computer science problem, is Sybil attacks. So Sybil attack, essentially, very basic summary. I have a file, and I say I'm storing a file, but we essentially have to say we have to store redundant copies of that file on the network, in case one goes down. But what keeps an attacker from saying, "Oh, I have 3 copies of the file. Please pay me for the 3 copies that I have," when I only have 1? And essentially, that leads to a whole lot of problems. So essentially, the way we solve this and figure this out is in terms of making each copy uniquely encrypted. Each redundant copy contains the same data, but it's uniquely encrypted, so each redundant copy is unique. So you can't fake having the data. You can't have 1 copy and say you have the other 2, because they're completely unique. You wouldn't actually even be able to tell from the outside, without knowing the decryption key, what those files are, or even if they're redundant copies. So from that portion, we're essentially able to say, here's these 3 copies, but no one is able to cheat and say they have a copy that they don't have. The other portion is consensus. So what happens if someone gains 51% attack on the network? So they have this, in the early network, they spin up a whole bunch of servers and a whole bunch of hard drives in the network, and that leads to problems. So it's essentially by the unique copies that I stated before, and essentially not directly relying on consensus for algorithm. So that's a few problems that have been raised in other decentralized storage systems like MadeSafe and some of these other ones that are coming about. They have some really good technical foundation, but a lot of people are concerned about these Sybil attacks. So, networks working all great. You look at something like Bitcoin, a huge, large network, and then suddenly gigahash.io gets 51% of the network or more, and then everyone's freaking out. But really, are you affected by that? No, not really. I mean, gigahash.io gets a couple of blocks in a row. They could maliciously double spend or, roll back blocks. Your transactions are buried thousands of blocks in, most likely, unless you're a transaction right. So 99.9% of the time, you're probably not going to be affected by that. People know it's bad for the network, but they're not directly affected, and they're not losing coins or anything. But what happens when you have a decentralized storage network is essentially you have tons of problems when you have a 51% attack. Or you have a person controlling the majority of the network, because then they can start dropping files or messing with the consensus or deleting stuff. You have all kinds of problems that happen with the file. So 51% on Bitcoin network, okay, it's bad. We need to move away from it. You don't lose any coins. 51% attack on a distributed data network, very bad. Start losing files. You have all kinds of problems that are associated with that. So that's why we've completely thrown out the mining portion of it. Doesn't really work. We've completely thrown out the consensus portion, so you're able to choose the methods that you want to verify and pay for your file. So you have complete control of that. You're not reliant on attack vectors for that. So we have methods where one person can prove 1,000 malicious people wrong, just essentially dealing with cryptography and hashes. That's something if you try on the Bitcoin network, very differently use cases would not work. The consensus, essentially, even if let's say everyone's a back actor, it wouldn't work out. You have to have at least 51% of the nodes being honest. For ours, one person can be honest, and it can at least alert to the bad behavior and try to correct it. So that's something that we're pushing towards, and that's how we built it out. So, ooh, whole bunch more questions now. All right, so I guess the next one is Ghost.
I think answer the last few ones and then talk about Storj Coin and the Crowdsale.
Sure.
Which question?
So let's run through some of these. So Ghost notification, incorporating sidechains would allow for various distributed applications generate their own sidechains for anyone interested in running that. So yeah, so like sidechains and tree chains are something that would be real great for the storage network, but like the sidechains and tree chains don't really exist right now, so we're kind of like holding your breath on it. But it's something that we really like to see so we can integrate storage more directly with Bitcoin technology. Let's see. Yes, if you'd like to get involved in the storage project, hop over to our forums on storjtalk.org.
What about
plenty of stuff to work on in terms of back-end or building your own stuff on top of storage. So feel free to contact us at hello@storj.io or hop on over to our forums and see what there is to work on. Let's see. Ethereum blockchain for Storj Coin. So we're not using. We're not going to use Ethereum as of now for the actual cryptocurrency, but should like the Ethereum network be production ready, that's something that could actually be very useful on the back end of storage in terms of doing the verifications and the payments in a trustless manner. We're using multiple different methods for that. So should, if, when Ethereum has produced some production level network, then we will be experimenting at integration with the Ethereum right now. So right now it's just kind of like on the roadmap, but we still have to wait for them to produce production level software for us to integrate it into storage. So we're looking at integration with multiple platforms: Counterparty, Mastercoin, Ethereum, MadeSafe, Siacoin, many other different portions. So that's just kind of on the list. It just has to be ready before we can do that. Let's see.
Okay, looks like that's most of.
Yeah, I think we got most of the questions.
One maybe. Bitcoin Creator asks, how would these applications perform running on relatively slow disks and slow bandwidth?
So essentially, if you have a slow disk or slow bandwidth, you're going to earn less storage coins for that, simply because you can't provide or push around much data. But essentially, there's use cases for that. So for the slow disk and slow bandwidth, we probably want to use those nodes for people who want to have the use case of backing up their files. So files that you want stored, but you may never ever access again. So there's a statistic floating around that of the data you store online, 80% of it you never really touch again. It's only the top kind of 20% of the data that you store you actually use. So for that, there's still a very use for people with very slow connections, slow bandwidth. That's fine. They're just going to get the files that are least accessed. And so they're just going to be doing small verifications, so that's not going to be using up much bandwidth. So as long as we know that the file is somewhere, then that's fine.
Okay. And on the topic, like, what is Storj Coin, and what can you provide more detail on what the role is in the network of Storj Coin?
Sure. So the Storj Coin it's called Storj Coin X. It's the cryptocurrency of the network. It's essentially the medium we use to buy and sell space on the network. So when you sell your hard drive space, you're earning Storj Coin X. And when you're storing files on the network, then you're of course selling, you're using it, you're trading it for storage space with someone else. So that gives it a really interesting use case, and that's different from Bitcoin, because what can you do with Bitcoin? You can buy and sell things, services, items. You can buy gift cards to gifts and use it to purchase things in stores. But the use case for Storj Coin is completely different. It's used for buying and selling data. And the cool thing about that is there's an existing demand for that. The cloud industry is a huge $150 billion industry compared to the totality of Bitcoin, which is about $7 or $6 billion. So there's already demand for data. There's already demand for that use. Versus when majority of merchants that perhaps accept Bitcoin are just going to immediately sell it on the exchange. And that just leads to downward price pressure on Bitcoin that none of us like. But for storage, it's completely different. You're continually using this Storj Coin to essentially store your data. So you're paying per check-in. So this Storj Coin is constantly being used in the network. So if I want to store some files on the network, I have to either earn the Storj Coin through selling my own hard drive space, or I have to buy it and use it on the network. So it gives it some intrinsic value that I don't think that happens with a lot of other coins. So you say, okay, what can I do with this? What can I do with Bitcoin? What can I do with this altcoin? Bitcoin, there's a lot of examples. For some of the other ones, not so much. But storage is a direct use case. Use it to buy and sell space on the network. There's an existing huge demand for that.
Well then, on that, how would the value, namely the price, be set for Storj Coin?
So in terms of that, that's set by the market. So I have no control of that. It's completely set by the users, the market, and demand. So users, buyers and sellers of the storage space are able to essentially set their prices and achieve a match on that. So that's completely decided by the network, the amount of storage coins, the amount of space, all of those things factor in.
Cool. And I'm just going to go back to my agenda here.
Oh yeah, so there's some talk about Ethereum, I guess, and the cashing out. Oh yeah, so it does look like Ethereum is selling some of their coins for dollars, I believe. In terms of us, we've actually been running 100% in Bitcoin from the beginning, so we really haven't touched any cash so far, other than a few tools that are reimbursed. But we're pretty much a 100% Bitcoin operation. When we go to conferences, we pay for them in Bitcoin, all the flights, the hotels, everything. So we're drinking the Bitcoin Kool-Aid in terms of our own internal ecosystem and storage itself.
And so how would people want to earn Storj Coin?
Sure. So essentially, they would obviously the easiest way to do it is download our DriveShare application that we're working on now. And it's fairly simple. You paste in your address and you hit go. Obviously, you probably want to adjust some settings on how much space you want to sell to the network. And from there, the app will take it from there. It'll be able to manage all the technicalities behind that and making that work, and the checks and the verifications. And you'll have files land on encrypted bits of files landing on your hard drive, and periodically you'll be getting payouts as well from the application for actually storing those files.
And so right now, how do people get Storj Coin?
So right now, the best way to get it is the crowd sale. So we're having a crowd sale right now, storj.io/crowdsale. And so that will allow you to get Storj Coin at the and also give you early access to Metadisk and DriveShare. So this is a very, very important point that I want to make, that only the participants in the crowd sale, which is ending in a couple of days, will be able to essentially farm their hard drives out on the early network. So they're getting early access to the software, support, the infrastructure, the coins, everything. So if you're a participant in the crowd sale, you're going to be kind of the first people that get to use the software. And so it's not till we say, hey, this is more, essentially more, essentially it's better for the crowd sale. So we're making the network, we're specifically gearing it to the people who participate in the crowd sale. So you support us, you support the development, you buy the software, then we'll make sure we'll give you all the perks and benefits of doing this stuff. So it's almost like the standard Kickstarter model where you're essentially getting a reward for contributing, participating, supporting the software. So to answer that question, so yes, you have to participate in the crowd sale to get access to the DriveShare app for the early network. So later on, when this network is scaled out and we're more comfortable with it, then yes, we'll be opening it up to the general population, general users to use it. But kind of in this early network where we're still figuring things out and we're learning from the network, we want to make sure that kind of the crowd sale participants get an edge on that portion and get all the early access to the software. So if you want to participate, if you want to use DriveShare and all those kind of stuff, you have to participate in the crowd sale. Essentially what we're going to be doing is it's like we can identify that this address was participating in the crowd sale, so we can send coins to that address. So in terms of the question, is a minimum required? So essentially, we're working out the reward level. So the people that contributed kind of first are probably going to be the first ones that are going to get the software. So there's not going to be any huge advantage, but those people will be getting the software first. So the idea is that we scale that very quickly. So you have we'll have 10 people that start using the software, and then 100 people, and then 1,000 people. So we scale it out very slowly and make fixes and testing along the way. So it is essentially a tiered release. So that's going to be essentially based on how much people contributed to the crowd sale and how much. The reason why I don't want to get into specific numbers is because we have to see how much people that the current network can support. So if we can support 100 people right now, and then we make a few changes, and we can support 10,000 people, we'll go for it. But if we need to make a few more fixes, then we might only scale to 1,000 people next. So we build it out slowly. We build it out. We scale out slowly, and we kind of learn from the network rather than just dumping it on everyone and essentially see how it works. No, we scale it very slow.
Okay. So the amount of Storj Coin I have will then indicate where I am in the line and how many, when I can come online compared to the rest of the network, and then I would earn Storj Coin sooner and faster.
Sure, sure. But the perhaps best way to get Storj Coin, so it's simply a reward offered up in the crowd sale along with the access to the software. But as of now, the best way to get Storj Coin is to participate in the crowd sale and get it directly. So I think a lot of people are thinking that magically I'm going to get tons and tons and tons of Storj Coin via the essentially hard drive farming. So that's something that's going to be scaled out. But this is a deflationary currency. We're distributing most of the currency to the early crowd sale participants, and kind of them farming out in the early network, and then the crowd sale. So that's the majority of way that we're distributing the Storj Coins. So the people who actually support us, and the actual people who are helping to build out the network. I think that provides a pretty unique advantage to anyone who participates in the crowd sale, because they will obviously get the best benefit out of it.
Okay. And so I think the majority of questions have been answered, and I just wanted to get some last thoughts from you about the project, and maybe something you want to share with the community. And as the crowd sale is ending on the 18th next week, and what time is that ending?
So probably be 11:59 on. I think we're on Eastern Standard Time. So don't hold me to that, but I believe that would be the last minute of the last day, and that's when we're ending that.
Okay. And do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the community and our viewers?
Sure, sure. So in terms of that, I think one of the portions. So let's see. Okay, so people are asking about the early adopters. So no, the early adopters will have a huge advantage in the network. So the people who participated in the crowd sale and essentially run. So if you participate in the crowd sale, you're going to get a decent majority of the coins there, and then those are the only people who are going to be able to earn from the early hard drive farming. So there's a huge advantage in the people who participate early. For the people who are coming in late, they're going to essentially have to wait till the network's more stable, in terms of we're completely finished and the networks is stable and everyone's happy to participate in the crowd sale. So those are the people that we're focusing on first. So I think people are a little confused that perhaps the people that participate in the crowd sale don't get much of an advantage. No, there's a huge advantage to participating in the crowd sale. So I just wanted to point that portion out there. And we'll probably be making that clearer through some emails that we'll be sending out in the next couple of days. So let's see. And I think the other thing is a lot of people are asking about the timeline on DriveShare. And so I'll give a little bit of update on that. So we have 2/3 of the libraries that we need to make it run. So we've been doing a lot of work on a library called Upstream that's essentially transferring the data between the network and the person who's storing the file. We already have the verification algorithm in place. It's been there for a while. So it's probably the bottleneck is the conference that I'm going to. I'm going to Cryptolina, doing a presentation there. That's the little bottleneck. So after that, it's probably only going to be a couple more days of sit-down development before I'll able to have something out. to the initial users to play with.
That's good.
And I think one other thing that I want to clarify, just the end here, is so a lot of people are really confused about the 10,000 or the 9,800 goal bitcoins for the Storj Crowdsale.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, well, you're not reaching that. You're only at this amount of percentage. That is completely fine. We have enough funds to really build out the initial network and get things running. And in terms of that, we're just going to have a bunch of leftover coins to distribute to the crowd sale participants in the early hard drive farming. And then we'll also be doing future crowd sales for other applications. So we're working on video applications and image applications, which is just taking the storage network and taking the storage architecture and putting it to a particular use case, a particular specific use case. So we'll also have some coins for that as well. So in terms of that, that's completely fine. So there's no detriment to the storage network, short or long term.
I think we have one last question. What kind of processing power is required for this network?
Not much. The algorithm is fairly simple in terms of its load capacity. It's just doing a few disk checks and then hashing them together. So you really probably could run this off of even a little Raspberry Pi connected to a bunch of hard drives.
Mm-hmm.
So the processing power is not that much. It's not like mining where you need all this computational power to make it work. No, it's fairly low computational power.
It's just about drive space.
Correct.
Well, I thought that was a really good list of questions. Oh wait, one more. Can Counterparty actually have a max coin value, or are we trusting the storage guys? Like when you say 500.
So essentially, at the end of the crowd sale, we're going to create all the coins that need to be created. So there's a cap of 500 million, and then we're going to lock the asset. So no more coins can be created ever by us or anyone else. So that's something that's going to be done at the end of the crowd sale.
All right. Well, I thank you so much for your time today. And
Indeed.
It was a really good chat we just had, and I look forward to seeing more from Storj and being able to participate in the crowd sale, which is ending next week on the 18th.
Indeed. So I'll stick around on the IRC chat so people can talk to me a little further. But yeah, it was great and great to answer some of the questions more directly from the users. So hope to follow up and do this another time as well. Let us work on the software a little bit and some of the technical stuff, and then we'll get back into some more questions and do some software demos as well.
That's good. Thanks, Shawn.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah. Bye.